This is Tom Fox. Welcome to this audio white paper on Hallmark 5 of the 10 hallmarks of an effective compliance program, communications, and training. A. 360 degrees of compliance communications. A 360 degree of compliance communication is an effort to incorporate your compliance identity into a holistic approach so that compliance is in touch with and visible to your employees at all times. It is about creating distinctive brand philosophy of compliance which is centered on your consumers. In other words, it helps a compliance practitioner to anticipate all the aspects of your employees' needs around compliance for your employees who are the customers of your compliance program. This is especially true when compliance is either perceived as something that comes out of the home office or is perceived as the land of no. A 360-degree view of compliance gives you the opportunity to build a new brand image for your compliance program. Compliance is often thought of as a two-way street, upward and downward, inbound and outbound, or side to side. However, it is better to think of it as a 360-degree effort. You simply can no longer effectively communicate in just two ways. You now communicate in a more holistic manner and in multiple ways. If you are thinking about communications in the classic form, you are missing something that is happening around you. 360 degrees of compliance communication is not just a classic form of communication, but rather it is a communication in the very concept of every interaction, whether they be planned interactions or whether they be accidental interactions. They are all forms of communication. This is particularly true if you're a compliance professional, a chief compliance officer, or a compliance practitioner. The things you do, the way you act, and the way people see you are always communicating. It is not simply communicating to one another, as often you may be communicating to a group across siloed boundaries, to constituencies you had not even planned to initially communicate with or through. There are several concepts which you should include in your 360-degree view of communications of compliance. Begin with an objective so you identify the purpose of your communication and the target of whom you are going to communicate to. Identify as clearly as you can the purpose and reason to engage to ensure that your message is aligned with your objectives. For instance, are you implementing a 360-degree view of communication to educate, inform, change perceptions, or build trust and commitment? Next, who is your audience? To communicate effectively, you need to understand your audience. In any corporation, there are multiple audiences who are the key stakeholders in the 360-degree process. How much do they know? Some of the stakeholders include the board of directors, senior management, middle management, employee teams, committees, coaches, facilitators, customers, business partners, vendors, sales agents, and representatives, and strategic alliances and business venture partners. What are your distribution channels, and how do you track your messaging? You should create a comprehensive spreadsheet to track the messages, the intended audience, and the delivery mechanism. Another key ingredient of the 360-degree approach is feedback. This is a key component of the 360-degree experience, and you should educate each stakeholder on the benefits of feedback from the 360-degree approach. Finally, you need to evaluate what you have done. You can monitor your communication activities by tracking attendance at the events, website statistics, and open rate of emails, downloads of materials, video hits. In other words, the same techniques that your marketing folks use to determine if their messaging's effectiveness. The objective is to build trust for the 360-degree process by determining if the goal has been achieved. You can utilize surveys or focus groups to assess the impact on your target audience. By focusing on your customers of compliance, i.e. your employees, it allows you to identify gaps and improve the communication process for your communication program. Using a 360-degree approach to communication, it allows a chief compliance officer to see around the corners and can be one of the greatest strengths of any best practices compliance program. The reason is listening. Listening is a key leadership component, and there are certainly many ways to listen. You can sit in your office and wait for a call or report on a hotline, or you can go out in the field and find out what challenges employees are facing. From this, you can work with them to craft a solution that works for the company themselves and holds to the company's ethical and compliance values. The best example I can provide to you is a story told to me by Louis Sapperman, the CCO at Dun & Bradstreet. It happened to him in Argentina. Argentina has an interesting form of illegal conduct, which is an open black market for the changing of currency. Sapperman was with a colleague who was one of the leaders in the company's South America's operations, and they went into a convenience store. The person who was going to sell him the product suggested they could go around the corner and change money on the black market where he could get a much better exchange rate, almost a 100% difference in the exchange rate than he could give in the convenience store. Sapperman declined to do so. He paid and received the established bank rate in the small transaction. Sapperman had not even considered role modeling as compliance. About 6 months later, one of his team members was in Mexico speaking to the leader of the Dun & Bradstreet operations in that country. The non-compliance function employee said that he was the person who had been with Sapperman. He recounted the story of doing the right thing, literally when no one was watching. That is the power of 360 degrees in communication. B, the use of social media. What is the message of compliance inside of a corporation and how is it distributed? In a compliance program, the largest portion of your customers, consumers, are your employees. Social media presents some excellent mechanisms to communicate the message of compliance going forward. Many of the applications that we use in our personal communication are free or available at very low cost. Why not take advantage of them and use the same communication tools in your internal compliance marketing efforts going forward? In an interview with Louis Sapperman, Chief Compliance Officer at Dun & Bradstreet, he talked about the company's integration of social media into compliance. Sapperman emphasized the tech-savvy nature of the company's workforce. It is not simply about having a younger workforce. If your company is in the services business, it probably means an employee base using technological tools to deliver solutions. He pointed to the data-driven nature of the D&B business model, so using technological tools to deliver products and solutions is something the company has been doing for quite a while. The use of technological tools led the company to consider how such techniques could be used internally in disciplines which may not have incorporated them into their repertoires previously. Not surprising, as with most successful corporate initiatives, Sapperman said it all began at the top of the organization with the company's chief executive officer, Robert Kerrigan. Sapperman noted that the CEO saw the advantage of using social media internally and challenged his senior management team to take a new look at the manner in which their corporate functions were using social media. From there, Sapperman and his compliance team saw the advantages of using social media for facilitating a 360-degree approach to communications and compliance. Sapperman considered the possibility for use of social media for compliance with those external to the company as well. Internally, Sapperman identified a tool called Chatter, which he uses similarly to Twitter users who engage in a tweet-up. He has created an internal company brand in the compliance space using the moniker #DoTheRightThing, which trends in the company's Chatter environment. He also uses this hashtag when he facilitates a Chatter Jam, which is a real-time social media discussion. He puts his compliance team into the event, and they hold it at various times during the day so it can be accessed by D&B employees anywhere in the world. He said he seeds the Chatter Jam so that employees are aware of the expectations to engage in the discussion respectfully of others. When D&B began these sessions, he also reminded employees that if they had specific or individual concerns, they should bring them to Sapperman directly or through the hotline. However, he does not have to make this admonition any longer, as everyone seems to understand the ground rules. Now the seating only relates to topics that each Chatter Jam begins with going forward. One of the concerns lawyers tend to have about the use of social media is with general and specific topics coming up on social media and the ill it may cause the organization. Sapperman believes that while such untoward situations can arise, if you make clear the ground rules about such discussions, these types of issues usually do not arise. This has certainly been the D&B experience. Each employee uses their own names during the Chatter Jams, so there is employee accountability and transparency as well. Sapperman said they further define each communication through a hashtag so that it cannot only be immediately be defined, but also searched in the archives going forward. He provided the examples of specific regulatory issues and privacy. This branding also enhances the process going forward. Sapperman points to specific compliance initiatives that arose during or from these Chatter Jam sessions to emphasize their utility. Sapperman emphasized that these events allow employees to express their opinions about the compliance function and what compliance means to them and their organizations. One of these discussions was around the company's code of conduct. He said that employees wanted to see the words "do the right thing" as the name of the company's code of conduct. I inquired about D&B's use of social media in connection with their third parties. Sapperman said that the company allows some of them to access its internal chatter tools to facilitate direct communications. Further, these external contractors can connect with both Sapperman and the company through Twitter. He said that he's consistently communicating to the greater body of customers about the compliance initiatives or compliance reminders on what the D&B compliance function is doing and how it's going about doing them. He believes it is an important communication tool to make sure that he and his team are getting their compliance messages out there. Sapperman also described using Chatter in a manner that sounded almost like Facebook and its new live video function. He said he can deliver short video vignettes about compliance to the employees. The compliance function or their employee base can then develop these further. Another approach was suggested by the company Hootsuite and its social media tool Periscope. Hootsuite did a campaign called Follow the Sun using Periscope. They asked their employees to showcase what they called #HootsuiteLife. They gave access to different people in every company office around the globe. Throughout the day, it would follow the sun, and people in the different offices would log into the Hootsuite account and walk around and show off their culture, interviewing their friends, etc. They talk about the importance of culture and how they are proving it. The number of inbound applications dramatically increased after people got their sneak peek into the company. Think how powerful such a presentation could be for your organization if the focus was on compliance. Both of these initiatives drive home three key insights. The first is how compliance, like society in general, is evolving in many ways even faster. As more millennials move into the workforce, the more your employee base will have used social media all their life. Once upon a time, email was a revelatory innovation. Now, if you are not communicating, you are falling behind the eight ball. Employees expect their employers to act and treat them as if it is at the present day, not 1994 or even 2004. The second is that these tools can go a long way towards enhancing your compliance program going forward. Recall the declination to prosecute Morgan Stanley received from the Department of Justice back in 2012. One of its managing directors had engaged in FCPA violations. One of the reasons cited by the Department of Justice was 35 email compliance reminders sent over 7 years, which served to bolster the annual FCPA training to the recalcitrant managing director. You can use your archived social media communications as evidence that you have continually communicated your company's expectations around compliance. It is equally important that these expectations are documented. In other words, document. Never forget the social part of social media. Social media is more than a holistic, multi-sided communication. Not only are you setting out expectations, but these tools allow you to receive back communication from your employees. The D&B experience around the name change for its code of conduct is but one example. You can see that if you have several concerns expressed, it can alert you earlier to begin some detection and move towards prevention in your compliance program. C. What is effective compliance training? The communication of your anti-corruption compliance program, both through training and messaging, is something that must be done on a regular basis to ensure its effectiveness. One of the key goals of any FCPA compliance program is to train employees in the awareness and understanding of the FCPA, your specific company culture, and to create and foster a culture of compliance. Beginning in the fall of 2016 through the announcement of the new FCPA corporate enforcement policy, the Department of Justice began to talk about whether you have determined the effectiveness of your training. They continued in the evaluation of corporate compliance programs where they ask, has the company measured the effectiveness of training? This point has bedeviled many compliance professionals, yet it is now a key metric for the government in evaluating compliance training. Also raised in the evaluation was the focus of your training program, where the DOJ inquired into whether your training was tailored for the audience. The evaluation added 2 requirements. The first is that you must assess your employees for the risk to determine the type of training that you might need to deliver. This means you should risk rank your employees. Obviously, the sales force would be the highest risk, but there may be others who are deserving of the high-risk training as well. From your risk ranking, you need to then develop training tailored for those risks the employees will face. The key going forward is that you have thoughtfully created your compliance program, not only in the design, but who receives it, all coupled with the back-end determination of effectiveness. Finally, all of this must be documented. Most companies have not considered the effectiveness of their compliance training program. I suggest you start at the beginning of an evaluation and move outward. This means starting with your audience, which the company may tend to overlook. You should determine that all senior management and company board of directors have attended FCPA compliance. You should review the documentation of attendance and confirm this attendance. Make sure your department or group leaders are accountable for the attendance of their direct reports, and so on down the chain. Evidence of training is important to create an audit trail for any internal or external assessment or audit of your training program. One of the key goals of any FCPA compliance program is to train employees in awareness and understanding of the law, your specific company compliance program, and to foster a culture of compliance. What if you want to take your post-training analysis to a higher level and begin a more robust consideration of the effectiveness of your compliance training? Joel Smith, the founder of In-House OWL, a training services provider, considered the analysis of return on investment for compliance training. He advocated performing an assessment to determine ethics and compliance training ROI to demonstrate that by putting money and resources into training, a compliance professional can not only show the benefits of ethics and compliance training, but also understand more about what employees are getting out of the training, i.e., its effectiveness. The goal is to create a measurable system that will identify the benefits of training, such as avoiding a non-compliant event as an FCPA violation. Smith's model uses 4 factors to help determine ROI for ethics and compliance training, and they are engagement, learning, application and implementation, and business impact. These 4 factors can be used to help you determine your compliance training effectiveness. The beauty is that it provides feedback not only on the compliance training to determine effectiveness, but in a much wider variety of areas for your compliance program. Surveying can provide critical information on the state of your compliance program and provide substantive feedback for further inclusion into your compliance program. Testing your program and using that information in a feedback loop is another key component of a best practices compliance program. The importance in determining the effectiveness of your compliance program is now enshrined by the Department of Justice in its evaluation and brought forward into the new FCPA corporate enforcement policy. The evaluation demonstrates the DOJ wants to see evidence of the effectiveness of your training. This is something that many chief compliance officers and compliance professionals struggle to determine. Both the simple guidelines suggested in this white paper and more robust assessment and calculation provide you with a start to fulfill the requirements first set out in the evaluation, as you will eventually need to demonstrate the effectiveness of your compliance training program going forward. The end. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you have enjoyed this audio white paper on Hallmark 5 of the 10 Hallmarks of an Effective Compliance Program. It is based on a chapter in my upcoming book, The Complete Compliance Handbook, which will be released in April 2018, published by Compliance Week. For more information about my book, you can check it out on my website, www.fcpacompliancereport.com, and you can pre-order a copy now.